dedicated detail section for standard cost estimate overview in this course. When you go to that section, you will learn a lot of steps and configs involved and included in this section. But here I'm gonna take you through the overview and the steps involved and what it looks like when you have standard cost estimate in SAP. This is the standard cost estimate overview. Whenever you do a cost estimate for a particular material, you'll have certain key parameters you have to enter in SAP to understand what material. So you need to enter material, what costing variant to use, what plant to use, what should be the costing lot size, and what should be the costing version. Costing lot size, you can leave it blank, so it can take it from the material master. Then you have to define from costing date, from what date you want that costing to run to costing date. Those are the validity date. For example, if you want a costing date next month, so you should specify the next month. Costing to date, that means from next month until that date the cost estimate is valid. Quantity structure date, what date the system should pick the quantity structure date, and valuation date, and what should be the valuation date. So these are the date control we learned before, so you have to mention it here. Then you have to mention transfer control, or you can leave it blank if you don't want to mention that. Once you execute that, you have different views in cost estimate. So in itemization, you'll see what is material cost, what is activity cost, what is overhead, spread across all those costing items. Then you'll have cost component split view, where you can see cost component wise. For example, material may be clubbed together in one component as a raw material cost. Then activity might have like machine hours. You can select different machine hours. It can be or labor hours. So the cost component you defined in the earlier lecture, we learned what are the cost component you should define, or a company can have like 40 cost components. So you can club it together, any activities, any material, or any overhead. So it will show up on your cost component split view. So if in this case there is two materials, so one might have raw material, or just both might have raw materials, so you can club it together, raw material as a cost component. Then activity, these two activity, one might have a labor activity, another might have machine hour activity, so you can plan that as well. Overhead, so overhead also you can group according to cost elements, so you can see that in cost component split. We'll see this detail in our next section, which is totally dedicated to standard cost estimate. Then you have log. There can be three types of log. One is just for information, another will be warning, third one will be error. Information is just to give you some basic information about the cost estimate you executed. Warning is all about if you miss some steps, or you are not taking consider of all the standard behavior of SAP, it will warn you, but it will still execute. But error message you need to resolve before it can execute. So error message can be anything like missing cost, missing date, or missing something you missed which is required to execute the cost estimate. So that will be error log. We learn this detail in our section which is dedicated to standard cost estimate. Now let's see how standard cost estimate execute in SAP. How SAP knows what to consider, what not to consider. Standard cost estimate is based on the material master. We maintain certain parameters. We saw that the tables and material master tab, which is relevant to costing, right, on the previous lectures. So in this scenario, if you see, we execute cost estimate by CK11N or CK40N. The difference between those two T codes or transaction codes in SAP is CK11N you can do it by material, CK40N is kind of you can do it by materials, plants, so mass, like you can select thousands of materials or multiple plants. But CK11N you have to do it by material, just one material. So when you do this T code, and when you execute this T code, first it looks for if that material has a do not cost indicator. If it does, then that's the end of the process. If it does not, that means we are telling SAP to cost that material. Then the second step, it looks for with quantity structure check mark, yes or no. If it is check marked with quantity structure, then it will go standard cost estimate with quantity structure. If it is not check mark, then it assumes that this cost estimate should be considered without quantity structure. So if with quantity structure, then it goes and look for procurement type, that is in-house or external, that is in MRP2 view. Then it determines quantity structure with reference to date control. We learn what date control plays an important role. This is how it comes into picture. So what date you wanted that quantity structure to be valid. For example, you can execute cost estimate with last year's quantity structure date. What that will do, whatever activities or whatever bill of material attached on that date, it will consider that as cost estimate. So you can specify if you want that date to be today, so it will consider whatever you have defined in bill of material routing. So it will take on that date as quantity structure date. Plus you need to have value structure, and you need to have transfer control specified. So all these included will be a costing result. So costing result can be done. If it is done, then that's the end of the process. If there is a log, there is error log, then you need to resolve. If there is a information log, you need to see what kind of information it has. If it is a warning log, then you have to see what are the warnings, then you resolve that. So this is kind of brief overview of standard cost estimate. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next lecture, which is about cost roll-up. And also the cost estimate has a dedicated section, so we'll learn in depth and detail in that section. That concludes overview of standard cost estimate.